Hey guys, VaulSC here. Hope that you're having a great week. We are going to witness a battle report between Shasvastii, that evil and malicious sectorial of Combined Army, and QapuKhalqi, the very interesting sectorial that's been around for a while from Hakislam, possibly not playable for a while in N4 according to the news, but possibly coming back again in the future. And the mission will be Frontline. Not one of my favorite missions, but it's a very easy mission to just jump into when you both show up to the game and you haven't texted each other to talk about what mission you're going to play, and you set up the table and there aren't any good spots to just put objective markers. It often reverts to the old Annihilation or Frontline, and that's exactly what happened in this mission. In this instance of the bat rep, but it will also be a good opportunity for me to continue from my recent video where I talked about turn order and the lieutenant role and the strategy around that, because as you guys know from my many years of doing these bat reps, I sometimes go straight for the second turn, giving my opponent the deployment, giving them the alpha strike, giving me the bad deployment zone, all to get that final coveted last turn at all costs. And this will be another case in point example of how that kind of thing works. Does it work? Do I fall flat on my face? I have definitely played some games where I indeed have fallen flat on my face, but also some games where that's worked with resounding success. And sometimes it does depend on your luck, sometimes it does depend on your opponent. This game, the luck is going haywire. We're going to have some really good luck on both sides, as we often do. That's just infinity, it's how it works. But of course, my opponent is the wonderful Hexer, who plays against me all the time, who you've seen me playing against multiple times before. He's the Pano and Hakislam player that we all know and love. So we'll go to the lists and talk about what's what. Oh, actually, just before I do that, just to remind people how Frontline actually works, it works like this. You've got two sides, and then you play right into the end of the game, and there's this very thin strip through the middle of the table. Basically, you look at the deployment zones and you work out which one is closest to you. Let's say this is the one closest to me, this one's the next closest, and this one's the next closest after that. And I am here. This is Vol in this deployment zone. If I've got more stuff in this zone than my opponent in terms of points, I think I get like a point, like a measly 1 point if I recall correctly. If I get more stuff in this zone than my opponent, it usually works out to about 3, although I think it matters for liaison officer and stuff like that. And if I get more stuff in my enemy's zone, I get even more points. I think it's like 4, and there's a classified as well. So classified plus liaison officer, does that work out to 10? Yeah, it does work out to 10. So it's something like that. Can't be bothered looking up the mission specifics, but it's all about moving into the zones and having more points worth of stuff alive at the end of the game. And if you've done a good job holding on for the entire game, then your opponent's stuff's going to be in the middle. They're going to be sitting ducks. You just shoot them, you move in, and you win. But your opponent still has 3 turns to wipe you out, and it is infinity after all. And aggressive players quite often achieve that. So, what are we looking at in terms of lists? I've been wanting to play lots of Shasvastii leading up to Shasvastii actually coming out, and then once they did actually come out, I played like 1 tournament and had some bad luck, and then didn't really play them much in casual games. Really want to turn that around. We're back with Sheshkiin. I talked her up so much, but I haven't really played her, and the times that I did play her, she just fell flat on her face because I was astronomically unlucky. Astronomically. But she is still too powerful for N3, and we're hoping that N4 fixes her. Yes, I have heard about the new crit mechanic. I don't really feel like talking too much about it right now, because even though the crit mechanic is interesting, is changed in an interesting way, it's just so dependent on whatever else we have in the context and what the actual units are like and what the other mechanics are like. So I don't really want to go there. We're playing N3 today, where Sheshkiin will crit on 1s or the desired result and will just cause wounds automatically. So punching through your armor. She has a Nox hacker to put the hacking onto either the T drone, who's going to be in the group, or the Q drone. So where I would normally have a Noctifer in this kind of list, I'm using the SWCs for the Caliban and the Q drone. One thing I feel like I can trick my opponent a little bit with is that I've got 2 Calibans and a Shrouded, and if I make it look like I've got a mine, my opponent won't suspect that I've got a 1.5 SWCs and an extra 30 odd points in the camo markers up front. So my opponent will hopefully assume that I've got a Noctifer in group 2, as I often do. And you kind of need to mix up a bit more, because if you always take that Noctifer, then they're going to guess more accurately. And if you do this trick a bit more often, they're going to not suspect camo markers are actually not mines. So Noctifer missing from this kind of setup. Also Mentor missing from this kind of setup. We've only got 2 target creatures. Otherwise, fairly standard sort of list. And one thing that I feel is a little bit annoying about the new Shasvastii is that whenever I write lists for them, it's either the Sphinx list, 10 orders, or it's a variation of Sheshkiin, which usually has her in a big group in group 1 with all regular orders, then like 3 regular orders in group 2, plus 3 target creatures, and that's it. And I can't seem to come up with many other combinations. Whereas when I play Combined Army or Yuching or whatever else, there are so many of these cool little configurations, or even Ikari, which is a sectorial of similar size to Shasvastii. I come up with all of these fun new ideas to play it, whereas with Shasvastii, I feel a bit locked into a couple of optimal builds. And unfortunately, that's the way of it for a lot of N3 sectorials. A lot of them out there, Caledonia, you know, there are these factions where there's a best way to play it, right? And there's not a lot of room for experimentation if you are trying to, you know, optimize your chances of winning. So that's what I'm playing. My opponent has been on my bat rep so many times, he's actually thinking ahead and actually talked to me on Messenger and gave me 2 lists. He showed me the actual list that he's playing here, which has got Hafsas everywhere. And then he actually sent me this list, and he explained that this list is what the courtesy list would show the opponent, which is quite hilarious. So he's making it look like there's a Harris of Odalisks, a Janissary core, and some, you know, beefy AROs back here. But what he's actually got is an Odalisk team with the Hafsa being the main point man gun. There's a Hafsa lieutenant with a rifle light shotgun hanging around the back, probably looking like something important. And also there's a Hafsa hanging out with the Jambazans to make it look like there's like a Jambazan HMG or something in there, which is quite fun. 3 Yuan Yuans as you do, but no hackers, of course. You'd need a Evo repeater for it to actually benefit these guys with assisted fire, and there are no TR bots or anything like that, so hacker not really needed. In fact, doesn't look like there are any remotes at all, so no remote. Oh, actually, we've got Lila Sharif in there, my bad. She does have that, and then there are the 2 flash bots, so I didn't observe that, didn't read. So, Shasvastii, definitely the superior sectorial to QapuKhalqi in the long run. They're more powerful, but it's infiNity. So the difference between the best sectorials and the worst aren't actually as big as you'd think, and it largely comes down to how well you play, how hot your dice are in the game, then distantly after that, whether you have a better army list and better sectorial. So it still will be kind of scary. Okay, back to the game and the table. My opponent wins the dice roll for the lieutenant off and chooses the table side, which we agree before the game is actually better. We actually went as far as giving one player a better deployment zone. That's this zone over here. So my opponent picks this side for QapuKhalqi, leaving me with the Shasvastii side over here. And after thinking about how badly it would be to get Alpha Strike Ball, the Yuan Yuans and stuff, I did choose to take second turn. So my opponent gets to see what I deploy before deploying his stuff, and I will get a terrible deployment zone with a lot of stuff kind of exposed, and he will get to attack me first with all those Yuan Yuans. So it's going to be a hard game, but we'll talk here about my decision to take second turn rather than opting for first turn, and we'll keep referring back to this throughout the game because it's an important point, you know. If I go first here, I mitigate some of those disadvantages, but can I get a lot done with Sheshkiin's list here? Note that I haven't taken any Speculos, haven't got a Cadmus Drop Trooper, I've only got 2 Tiger Creatures. To get across there, you know, with Sheshkiin, she could run into a bit of trouble. The main strategy for this list, if I do get first turn, is to activate the Caliban initially, So the Caliban goes looking for kills and is quite effective at doing that with for deployment. And then in game round 2, we move some stuff to group 1, and Sheshkiin moves out with the full team and spends 11 orders, including the Lieutenant order, and hopefully finishes them off that way. So could I have achieved that this game? We'll look back at that question. But also making this decision assumes that I can defend very well. I'll be kind of banking on the fact that my opponent may be tricked into thinking that I have a Noctifer or a mine where I don't. But looking back at the list, I kind of wish that this list had been a bit more defensive, as we'll come to see shortly. Right, so let's look at it. I'm deploying first. I'm using a Q drone and a T drone. I've only got 2 remote combined army bots, so I'm having to use this one as a flash bot here on the right-hand side. Tiger creature on the extreme right-hand flank as well, prone behind this thing. We've got our little HVT out here. This is the this is the T drone missile launcher bot, and they're all connected to this Nox Trooper hacker in the middle. So the link team is kind of looking like this. It's in a bit of a star shape here, so they're all sort of connected to that one guy. So here it is. Sheshkiin standing out here. She's kind of exposed, but remember she's got a nano screen and 2 wounds and could just guts prone down here onto this nice safe platform. But keeping her standing up there without looking at the enemy deployment zone will allow her to pick off things that come through into my side. So the really important and strategic thing about that is that she's not going to get shot by a Janbazan HMG or a Janissary missile launcher turn 1. They're going to have to come out around here and attack me to be able to do that, but she'll still be able to sort of fire at the light arms fire that comes through the middle of the table. The Nox Trooper and the Hacker both prone in the safety of this building, obviously connecting to this T-drone. I only want to give the T-drone 1 long fire lane through here, and of course a couple of bits to block for Yuan Yuans at the back. Because again, if he just aims to take it out with a Janbazan or Janissary turn 1, the weight of dice will probably overpower me despite the link, and I won't have assisted fire up at that point because I don't have first turn. And then we've got another Nox Trooper further out. In fact, one of these guys was a Tensho Trooper. That's the one next to the Hacker. I like a Tensho because there are some situations where I'll have to get around a jammer, and I need at least one thing that can do that. Shasvastii, of course, can't take any more rats. We've got a Ikadron out here, another Tiger creature, Dr. Worm over here, which can either move this way to revive the T drone or this way to revive the Q drone. He's on the other side of the deployment zone. So we'll look at that. Left-hand zone over here, so Ikadron at the back, Q drone over here. Not watching the table per se, but easily able to see things coming over those stairs through this angle here. It's a really powerful ARO strategy and tactic, really, to... when you're defending, try not to have too much vulnerable stuff that can just see the enemy deployment zone. Experienced players get better and better at doing this, whereas the new players make this mistake often where they keep stuff hidden or just watch the enemy, like the entire table with it, giving your opponent too much ease of use, as it were, to actually just shoot you from long range. We've got the Caliban prone up top, plus the Shrouded down here standing up. Made to make my opponent think that this model here is a mine. Later on I decided I didn't like this positioning, so I just moved them and sent them over this way instead, just because there was a bit of a platform at the top there where if my opponent moved on to that with something, they'd be able to sort of shoot down and actually see the backs of bases and things like that, so I wanted to defend that part of the battlefield, so I had to reposition them. So Q drone from the back, this is another closer look at where the link team is. Here's the repositioned Caliban at the top with SMG and forward observing Shrouded down the bottom. My Spitfire Caliban is in reserve. Closer look at Sheshkiin, only semi-painted at this point. She's going to look better once she's fully highlighted. My opponent now, a couple of proxies here and there, I think. So on his left-hand side of the battlefield, we have an Odalisk. We've got some sort of bot. We've got Lila, what's-her-face. We've got a Janissary here. I think this guy's a Hafsa. And there's a Ghulam sniper, or even a liaison officer at the back. Or that's the sniper there. This is the sniper. And this guy here is the liaison officer. So there you go. It's the left-hand side, through to the middle. Janissary HMG, although I think that, again, is a Hafsa. Warcore up the top here. That's liaison officer. That's the sniper. Right-hand side, my opponent sending these... this Harris team here, he's pretty confident that the Noctivas won't have any line of sight And in fact, looking at that, there was nowhere in my deployment zone where I could have put an Octopher to be able to see these guys, and of course we know I don't actually have an Octopher, but he doesn't know that at this point. Jambazan HMG here, another thing that looks like a Jambazan but is actually just a Hafsa with a rifle and a flash bot at the back, Fanhouse remote. My reserve trooper is this wonderful Caliban Spitfire. Importantly, even though this is boring, you can sometimes win just by holding off your opponent for long enough and then just having a model that hasn't had even one order spent on it through the entire game just stand there and be a huge wad of points. So if we think about it, these Calibans together worth a total of 69 points, and they're going to be in marker state, and they're going to start pretty close to, if not in the zone. And if they get shot, mind you, they have the Shasvastii rule as well, which can be quite effective. So I was trying to start them in positions where potentially I might not even have to use them. Okay, my opponent's really cool looking command board here. These blue tokens represent his group 1. I've spent a command token to subtract 2, and group 2 he's got some regular orders there. So we've got a Yuan Yuan showing up, and my opponent, like, I remember going and taking a phone call for work or something like that, and I came back to the table and he'd been thinking really carefully about where to put his Yuan Yuans, and he managed to find this spot, which appeared to be in the back arcs of everything, and you know, total cover for everything else, and he decided to drop him here. After dropping the Yuan Yuan and making the roll, I actually realized there was a opportunity for a flash bot on the other side of the table to have a shot him. But I decided not to take that shot because I felt it would have been unfair for my opponent, because we sort of had a quick talk about whether the Yuan Yuan would have landed within anything that had a line of sight to it, and we thought not, and then we made the roll, then I realized there was. So in those such situations, I usually prefer not to actually take the free shot. However, we then noticed that he was actually in range of a camo marker, which he thought was a mine. And after talking about it some more and openly discussing this with my opponent, we agreed that I should be allowed to fire at him with this shrouded, because I had successfully tricked him into thinking that it was a mine. He would have landed it there even if I declared that there is a camo marker in line of sight of him. So based on that, if we just sort of look, I mean, the better way to have played this would have just been to be a bit more pedantic and just check more carefully and make, you know, say, are you absolutely sure there's no arrows? That would have been the better way to do it, but for casual friendly game, we decided that it was only right for the shrouded to be able to shoot at him, because, you know, he'd made this play under the assumption that that camo marker was unlikely to shoot back because it was clearly a mine. That turned out to be incorrect, and the shrouded shoots at him and does kill him, which is awesome. Plan worked. There you go, guys. So we then have the next Yuan Yuan also finding a little bit of an interesting spot somewhere on the battlefield, just barely out of line of sight of this Doctor Worm. And just like the first guy, does manage to land, despite him having no assistive fire or evo bot, and having me hack transport and him hitting on 11. So look, it wasn't the hardest drop in the world, but I kind of was hoping to be able to scatter at least one of these guys. That didn't happen. And then the next guy walks on the board on the side of the table. It may not look like that's legal because there's a sort of a wall there. Normally you can't use that, but the edge of the table is actually technically like here, so we allowed it. We allowed him to walk on the side of the terrain there. So, 2 Yuan Yuans in my midst. The first one comes down over here and eventually stands up in line of sight of my Q drone after walking down a little bit further, and I eyeballed it. I'm like, well, it looks pretty close, and I'm deciding to dodge. I feel like maybe I should have shot at him, but even though the Q drone's dodging on like a 7, that's still uncontested. Like, you've got a full 35% chance or whatever it is of just surviving the dodge, and then you've got a chance to pass on armor. Unluckily, though, Q drone does get destroyed by that, which is painful. The other Yuan Yuan has landed in a spot here where I do get a change of face at some point, but he moves out and he's able to throw a smoke grenade in the face of me actually shooting him with the Nox Trooper that's turned around. At least I think that's how it went down. But yeah, so we've got a position here where he actually fires chain rifle instead, I think, and it goes over top of the Nox Trooper and the Icadron, if I recall correctly. Maybe I didn't turn around. I'm not 100% sure what happened here. I think, if I recall correctly, the Nox Trooper does turn around, does get a volley of shots into him, doesn't kill him because he passes armor saves and his shots are whiffed. Nox Trooper fails his armor save. Icadron, I think, survives. And then we have the other Icadron after people have turned around. So we have the Yuan Yuan. After people have turned around, he moves out and throws a smoke grenade successfully. So my opponent getting a little bit lucky here. Nothing like earth-shatteringly lucky, but annoyingly lucky. Q-Drone's already dead. Nox Trooper's already dead. And this guy will be able to continue doing damage. So he walks up the stairs under cover of the smoke. Gets into a lovely position here where he comes into close combat and can then fire a chain rifle, touching the first guy and Sheshkiin, but not the next guy. No, in fact, he does touch all three of them, I think, with the chest mine, the chain colt. And annoyingly, I think Sheshkiin takes a wound. Can't quite remember exactly what happened in this scenario, but I do remember the Nox Trooper dodging, and the T-drone shoots back at him, and this causes the link to break. But yeah, the Yuan Yuan does go down. He does get destroyed, but I'm pretty sure I took either a wound on Sheshkiin at this point or one of the Nox Troopers died. Not 100% sure on my recollection there, but I did take a little bit of a hit. So he then goes over to the Odalisque group, which involves a Hafsa, and moves him up to the side of this building, which is very close to his deployment zone. So he's moving along here, and he's going to basically set them up here and climb this one up the top. Now, we couldn't quite remember from the rules, but I'm pretty sure when you do a long skill climb, it reveals if you're a camo marker, and if you're a hollow projector guy, apparently that does as well. I'm not 100% sure, but a Hafsa with rocket launcher is revealed, and then he's able to move around and get some real damage. So this is where I was like, did I make a terrible choice not taking first turn and having to have this deployment zone? This is potentially pretty bad. So rocket launcher, of course, can now waste Dr. Worm, which is terrible news because I have lost my Q-Drone and I want to revive him. I've lost a Nox Trooper and I want to revive that, but this may not happen now because the Doctor gets obliterated by the linked heavy rocket launcher over here. Even though it's just a Hafsa, burst advantage does blast me. So, looking pretty bad. The other Odalisque over here is noticing that there's a Shrouded nearby and sort of creeping up on him. She'll attempt to attack him at some point. We also have the Hafsa going after... so this is the Hafsa going after the Doctor at this point, setting up for that, destroying him. We also have, I think, the other... Because the link team accidentally got broken towards the end of this because he left them out of coherency, the Odalisque with the SMG here is able to go after my Shrouded, but if I recall correctly, there was at least one attempt to kill him in this first turn, but it fell flat because Shrouded with camo marker on cover managed to fend that off. What did happen, though, was the Tiger Creature managed to get off a couple of dodges towards this Odalisque, which starts to get a bit annoying because the Tiger Creature can trade up pretty well against people like this with Berserk. I mean, normally Icol would be a problem, but Berserk gets around that. So he's got, he's got the Yuan Yuan activating, he's got the rocket launcher, he's got the SMG, but every single time, for some reason, the Tiger Creature manages to dodge. And although the first half of my turn here went pretty poorly, I should say, it starts to go well just for this one specific model. We have him showing a camo marker here, just indicating where the Odalisque is going to be dodging to, or moving to. He even pulls out the big guns, the Jambazan HMG, and sprays shots into that Tiger, but I just rolled a crit and started laughing and dodging towards him very antagonizingly and aggressively. So, Tiger Creature's still here. We've got the Yuan Yuan moving, and again, Tiger Creature just goes for the dodge, just goes for the win. Finally, he has a Ghulam with a sniper rifle, which moves around and takes this long-range shot at our Tiger Creature in the distance. But if I recall correctly, the Tiger Creature still wins, still dodges. So, yeah, pretty laughable for the end of this QK turn, but at least he did some damage at the start. And then, of course, it's revenge time. And the Shasvastii can have our first turn here. Alright, so I'm just reflecting on this. My opponent won the lieutenant role, went for deployment, picked the better deployment zone, did have some stuff to attack me with, 3 Yuan Yuans dropping on me, and this Hafsa link team having a go at my back line. I have taken some casualties. I think Sheshkiin's wounded. On top of that, I've lost my TR bot and my Doctor Worm and one of my Nox troopers. I think one of my Echidrons actually died that turn, and I still have people in my mids. But one thing I want you guys to remember is that most factions and most armies only have so many things that can actually do the damage in turn 1. I kind of like to design my army list so I've got a few waves of attacks, just in case I'm going first. But a lot of armies and a lot of lists just sort of run out of steam, and QK is sort of one of those things. Once you've lost all your Yuan Yuans, and once your aggressive little mini-link team has been blunted, and you haven't really got anything that's fast at attacking, well, it's going to be pretty plain sailing for the rest of the game. If you've got something with a bit of teeth left over, such as Sheshkiin, you might find it pretty easy to just move in on their territory. And although I've lost some really nice pieces, I've still got Caliban Spitfire and the Caliban SMG. The Shrouded's lived somehow, and I've got Sheshkiin with a couple of team members doing okay. Anyway, this guy runs in here and berserks the Odalisk and does 1 wound on her and dies. The other one runs up on the right-hand side of the battlefield along the flank here next to my HVT and Spitfire Caliban. Here is a point in the game where I made a blunder. In my opinion, it's a blunder. So I've got a 4-man link team which I can reform. I can't quite remember how this works. I think that if you start the turn with a active link team and there's a link leader and it's like a 4-man link team and there's a 5th model that's legal to join it within coherency, you can just sort of automatically bring them back in. I think that's how it works. Can't 100% remember, but I'd have to check the rules. Anyway, we put up assisted fire with our Nox hacker onto the T-drone. It moves up to the cover. Then it has a go at shooting long range at this Hafsa with rocket launcher. Now, I'd forgotten a couple of things here. He had reformed the link team, so he has 2 dice. And I am a 4-man link team only, so I've got 2 dice. So neither of us are getting ballistic skill bonuses, and both of us on the same burst. I've got assisted fire here, so it's 2 dice on 14s for me. But he's got what? A Hafsa. So Hafsa is ballistic skill 12, which I kind of underestimated. So really I've just got myself into a situation where it's 2 dice on 12s versus 2 dice on 14s, and somehow in my head I'm thinking, I just need to attack him with that T-drone and I've got a really good, 60, 70, 80% chance of killing him, which is totally false. It's just not the case. So bad play. Sorry for you guys who expect, more from my channel. Expert plays all of the time, tournament winning plays, but honestly, I'm better at YouTube than I am at winning games sometimes, and this falls flat and the T-drone just dies in a mushroom cloud. And I was starting to feel a bit tilted here because I had a little bit of bad luck previously, kind of made it back with some good luck, but I'm now making mistakes. And I thought, well, I feel like I'm losing. I wasn't actually losing. I didn't actually need to do any rash moves here, but I thought, to hell with it. I'm just going to YOLO it and start playing like there's no tomorrow. So I reformed the link team with Sheshkiin, and she's joined up with her 2 Nox trooper helpers over here, just barely within range, and she walks down the stairs, and she comes face to face with a Janissary missile launcher in a link team. And Sheshkiin's at long range, but 5 dice, critting on 1s, or I think it's 9s? Yeah, so Blitzskull 15, -3 range, -3 cover, so 15s goes down to 9s on 5 dice, Janissary shooting back on presumably 16s on 2 dice, so kind of YOLO, not very intelligent, you're kind of just fishing for crits, but hey, the dice gods finally pay me back for the terrible games I've had with Sheshkiin in the past, if you guys are fans of my channel, and Sheshkiin just rips him up with 2 crits immediately, so game on. Alright, Sheshkiin continuing to move out now, trying to save the day single-handedly. Walking across here into line of a Warcore and his Jambazan HMG, fires at both of them, splitting burst, but unfortunately they managed to survive. So, pulling back again, I'm just going to try and move Sheshkiin to a point where she can actually hide for a bit, and that should be enough for now that I've removed Yuan Yuans and crap like that, because she goes and I think shoots another one from a different position. And knowing that my opponent's got very few things to come and actually weed me out with at this point, keeping Sheshkiin back defensively might be a fun thing to do. So she's coming back over here, shooting I think the Yuan Yuan or the Hafsa rocket launcher as she does so. I think removing him with another crit like crazy and then just planting herself in this total cover nearby. So she's able to set up over here. She has been wounded by something. I can't remember what that something was. Possibly the Jambazan HMG or the Yuan Yuan from earlier. But she's just going to camp here with her nanoscreen. And if they come around to get shots off at her, she's just going to dodge or shoot or whatever. And I'm just kind of hoping here, because if my opponent puts all of his turn 2 into just killing Sheshkiin, remember, I've got both Calibans and the Shrouded, and potentially the final turn to just move a cheeky Ikajon into the middle zone with baggage and win that way. That is the power of second turn in Frontline. Okay, my opponent, seeing the opportunity to reform a link team around this Ghulam just to replace the Janissary, which got wrecked, now does so, and he's planning on going after me with his sniper rifle. So, sniper rifle intact, the link team moves out, everybody uproots and starts slogging across the battlefield, running along here, occupying this building nearby with Odalisque coming up the stairs, and then we have this lovely Ghulam sniper down to the left here going after Sheshkiin. Sheshkiin is here. So, I look at it carefully and I think, well, dodging is on a 15, the Red Fury shot would be on a 12, but the thing is that if I win the face-to-face roll with the Red Fury, if I roll the dodge and like get like a 5 and I block a couple of shots and he still does damage to me, you know, I can guts into cover. That's fine. But if I shoot back, I crit on a 1 or a 12, right? So just that small chance of that increase is pretty big. If my opponent just shoots and kills Sheshkiin, he's got a good chance of winning. But if Sheshkiin kills him, I suddenly become the lead in this game, like by a long shot. Like, it really helps. So I actually opted to shoot back with her, because it did look quite close to 24 inches as well. And I felt like this actually was a good call. Because the risk-reward, like if I lose Sheshkiin, I still have a chance at winning. But if he dies with the Ghulam, he's in such a bad position, and there's very few other things that can go after Sheshkiin that it's probably worth having a go at. Also, we measured the range, and I knew it was going to be close, but it turned out that it actually was in range. So Sheshkiin's hitting on an 18 versus 3 shots on 14s with the Ghulam. I mean, he's firing good range, but nanoscreen, right? And the Ghulam's out in the open. So Sheshkiin actually wins the roll, and the Ghulam dies, and I'm suddenly in the lead in this game, miraculously. So, very bad lighting in this picture, but we've got a couple of Odalisques. They're in a 2-man team, which start to come after our Shrouded over here. And my opponent, his bad run of luck continues, and we've got an SMG trying to go after the Shrouded. The Shrouded is continually firing back with a combi rifle, not dodging or anything, but the Odalisque unfortunately has to contend with camo, whereas the Shrouded doesn't have to contend with anything like that. And the dice are fairly even. Shroudeds are pretty good with Ballistic Skill 12, and my opponent starts to lose a lot of these face-outs. Odalisque, of course, damaged from the Tiger Creature earlier, and for some reason, with a few orders here, just can't do anything to this Shrouded. So we end up with the position where the SMG Shrouded, SMG Odalisque over here, I believe, is in suppression fire at the end of the turn, and his liaison officer comes up through to here to potentially get some points for later in this building. And our Jambazan sniper, which turned out to be a Hafsa, just climbs back down here, preparing for that last turn push where you need to get models into the middle. Okay, my turn 2. We have a Tiger Creature on the right-hand side of the table. After looking at it carefully, I believe that the quickest way to get to the nearest enemy model was actually to jump onto the building, and because these guys are a bit faster, he could manage it. So the Tiger jumps up there. My opponent shoots with everything, and stuff's whiffing left and right, and armor save is passed, and finally the absolute last roll that he made managed to kill it. Otherwise, that would have looked really awkward with a Tiger Creature actually attacking them. So, looking at the scenario, I thought, well, there's a wonderful opportunity here for me to attack with my Caliban Spitfire. Because he's got models exposed, I can come right around the back and just start shooting him, and it's just going to be golden. Sheshkiin could move out, but she's going to be having to take on a suppression fire rifle with only 1 wound left, and it's a bit riskier, whereas this play is just golden, right? So he moves out. And then I thought, well, what if I go up the stairs and just attack this Odalisque here, and with my Pythian ability, I can actually eat her up, and it's probably more important to kill these guys on top of the building, because then I just win. But I was looking at another opportunity here, which was to move all the way back near this car, gun down a flash pole spot in the distance, then shoot the Odalisque in the back with no cover, and then there was a like a Ghulam long range in the distance, and I actually had enough orders here to systematically take out 3 or 4 of his troops and leave a Caliban in the back line, and I chose not to do that, which was an even bigger blunder, and probably the biggest blunder of this game. It was even worse than the move with the T-drone, so not my best game, not my proudest moment, but Caliban comes up here and of course completely forgets about iCall. So iCall is this ability that for some reason means that the Odalisque is going to impose a -9 to me in close combat. So even though I'm coming through here and I'm surprise attacking and I'm using Prothyon, this is an Odalisque in a link team with, you know, a nanopulsar, 6 Sense. She's got 360 visor. In fact, no, I take it back. She does not have 6 Sense because the Ghulam leader of the link team got shot while he was the link leader, so the link's broken. But anyway, we're moving in here, and I'm attacking, and the Odalisque actually fails with the nanopulsar initially, and I do manage to pull a wound off her with NWI, so I go up to 2 wounds, which means that I'm in a big lead. But as I'm continuing to attack her and try and bite her in the neck and do the vampire thing, I'm -9, so with Prothyon level 1, I'm going up to 26, down to like 17, and the Odalisque is still on something like a 15, so what I thought would be a pretty good fight for me turns out to be pretty even, similar to what that T-drone versus Hafsa actually was, which is really a concern, and got a bit unlucky here. The Caliban just took a few too many knives to the face and just died. So pretty awful here, me losing a model that costs 40 points. This was the MSV1 Spitfire. Oh, it's even worse, God. I really should have been going after stuff like the Flash Bot, which would have had its mimetism negated. That was just terrible play by me. So unfortunately, the Caliban is chopped down, so not a great moment. Sheshkiin, again, feeling a bit tilted, pushing out here, trying to take on the model that has suppression fire, failing a couple of times in a row. My opponent passing saves and, you know, just Sheshkiin not getting any more crits. So we're back into cover again. Okay, my opponent, final turn, moving out with the Odalisque that has a shotgun. Let's just check that Odalisque thing again. Odalisque. Rifle, light shotgun, nanopulsar. So that's this model here. Goes after the Shrouded and has the most amazingly bad run of face-to-face rolls with the Shrouded. But interestingly, not only does my opponent fail to beat the Shrouded in these shootouts, my opponent also passes all of the armor saves inflicted by the Shrouded's combi rifle. Note that we have got a shotgun giving us 15s on 2 dice, versus the Shrouded not ignoring the... The Odalisque doesn't ignore camo. That's why it's 15s on 2 dice. The Shrouded only has a range bonus, so 15 on 1 dice. So 15 on 2 versus 15 on 1, it is, again, actually quite close. You know, it's much like those other face-to-face rolls, missile launcher versus rocket launcher, or Caliban versus Odalisque in close combat. Turns out to be a lot closer than we thought, and the Odalisque continuing to move through here and not doing anything. She eventually gets to a point where she decides to cross beyond the threshold and comes around to even splitter shots at the Icadron and the Caliban here, and still manages to get through. In fact, doing a wound, I think, on the Icadron, staying out of flamer range, and eventually comes through to the point where she can assassinate Sheshkiin. And this is sort of my opponent's draw card here, because he's taken out my Caliban. If he can kill Sheshkiin as well, the mid-zone will really only have the Shrouded and the Caliban in there, and he's got like a Janissary and Lala Sharif and an Odalisque and stuff like that. But as it happens, this Odalisque moves through and does not, in fact, manage to kill Sheshkiin at all, and ends up in a really awful position at the end of the turn here. End of all of the QK turns, with Sheshkiin not actually dead because somehow managing to win these face-to-face rolls and survive. Sheshkiin just dodges away, right? Also happened that my camera ran out of battery in this game. So if I just quickly look at downloads here, my opponent took a few photos of the rest of the game with his phone in no particular order. We have a situation where He's got his liaison officer in the middle of the table, but I'm moving in with my camo marker shrouded into the middle. We have a point where I'm moving out with a couple of Nox troopers to go into the middle of the zone, and Sheshkiin into the middle of the zone. Also completing the rescue classified, where you've got to case fact somebody. My Caliban chain of command moving into the middle of the zone. He does get discovered as he does so, but nothing can shoot him. And classified completed again in the middle of the table. There it is there, the two Nox boys. And that's the positioning of his last couple of troopers through the middle. And we of course realize as well that the Caliban, who was fighting against the Odalisk, of course has the Shasvastii rule, and his corpse wasn't removed. So apparently I still get 40 points worth of Caliban just sitting there. I wouldn't have needed him, but had Sheshkiin died, I think I still would have won because we'd forgotten to remove his corpse, right? So it ended up being quite a decisive win for Shasvastii, and it turned out to reward me quite well for taking second turn, because it turned out to be a breeze after I'd fended off the initial attack. But the moral of the story really is that you should take second turn if you feel like you know what you're doing and you're confident and you know the matchup and you know your own list. If your list is very paper-thin, flimsy, and you think your opponent's got a lot of aggressive stuff to keep hammering you with, you probably shouldn't do it, right? Or if you actually have a lot of stuff in your own army list which is really just going to punish them and steamroll them so that they've got nothing left by turn 3, well, that's the way to go as well. Like if I was running that Sphinx kind of list against QK, I'd kind of prefer to go first, because there are a lot of flimsy things in QK that I can take advantage of, and I could have a lot of stuff hidden and avoiding Yuan Yuans when they eventually strike. But again, second turn is very, very powerful if you have the confidence. Just got to be really careful, because again, if you don't play defensively enough and you don't take the right moves and you can't recover, there are all sorts of things that can rip you apart. Even like an army that's very focused on spec fire, if they get lucky, like McMurrah, stuff like that, can just crack you pretty hard. Anyway, finally, a decent game with Sheshkiin where she overperforms. I've been waiting for one of those. We can sort of see how terrifying she is when she gets on a bit of a roll. But I must say, I did not play well this game. I mean, I'd still like my choice of taking second turn, but my decisions, God. Sheshkiin against the Janissary missile launcher, not wonderful. T-drone versus Hafsa, terrible. And Caliban against Odalisk. Oh my God, what was I thinking? I was in a much better position to shoot with that MSV1. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope that you're signing up for my Tabletop Simulator League. If you are into Tabletop Simulator, keep watching my videos and checking the Discord. More announcements coming in the weekend.